So thanks everyone for joining. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Olivia Jungles. I'm the director of our national training team. The purpose of today's call is to walk through the new Athena One Enhanced Self Check-in. This was released as part of the spring 2023 release. So it went live back in March. There are a lot of new exciting features that got rolled out as part of this update. There's also some limitations that we're well aware of, and we want to make sure everyone knows what those are as well. I want to level set and start by saying that everyone is automatically opted in to Enhanced Self Check-in unless you have a third-party vendor. So if someone on the call is utilizing Privia or Epion or any other third-party vendor, please note that this is going to, sorry, someone's trying to get in. This will be off for you because otherwise patients would get multiple different self-check-in notifications. You are still more than welcome to stay on today's training to learn more about what is being offered native to Athena. But just know that if you are not using a third-party check-in vendor, this should be turned on for you. If you are using something like Privia or Epion, this will be turned off. If you are interested in changing any settings or just checking that things are in place, please reach out to your operations consultant. We can make sure that that is in place or have a conversation about switching vendors here. But I want to cover what is included in Athena's Enhanced Self Check-in. So today we're going to go through first what this looks like from the patient's perspective. So what do they have the ability to complete ahead of their visit? We're going to go through on the flip side, what does that look like for your practice? So your front desk staff and your clinical staff are now going to be seeing some of this during that patient's visit. What does that look like? What should they expect? And how can they reconcile what is being sent from the patient? Next, we'll go through some patient communication. How are they receiving prompts to check in ahead of their visit? What's the timing on that? And then what do you as a practice have control over when it comes to those settings? We will look forward to Athena One's roadmap. As I mentioned, this came out as part of the spring 2023 release. Not every single feature is, already there. They're still working on a lot of improvements, and we're going to look at what we can expect over the next few months. We'll wrap up with some frequently asked questions, and I'll share some resources if you're interested in learning more or watching a demo. Like I mentioned, I want to start with what this looks like from the patient's perspective. So with the Enhanced Self Check-in feature, patients are able to do a wide variety of things ahead of their visit. First, they can update their contact preferences and their personal information. They're able to make payments. They're able to electronically sign forms, provide medication details. They can check in on behalf of their self or a family member or caretaker. And so this can be used for pediatric patients or patients with a caretaker that have access to their portal. So they can complete this as well. This can prompt patients to create a portal account if they don't have one, which is great for accessing test results, scheduling appointments, and messaging with the provider. So we'll continue to promote portal adoption. This should also indicate to you that patients do not need to have a portal account to complete self-check-in. This can be done outside of the patient portal. This can be done through a mobile device or on their desktop, so they can access this either place. This will also give patients the ability to toggle between English and Spanish easily just by clicking on the language in the top right-hand corner. That's the only other language that's supported at this time. So let's dive a little bit deeper into some of these features that I mentioned. First is just the basics of being able to update demographic and contact information. On the left-hand side here, you see a screenshot of what it would look like if the patient were on their phone completing self-check-in They're first prompted to do that, to collect the contact information. You can see that some of these fields are grayed out, and that means that they can't update those on their own. So first name, last name, email address, they can't change those from self-check-in. They would have to contact the office if those aren't correct. And that is for a good reason, but they can update other information here, including if they move, contact information, if they want to receive phone calls or text messages, as well as some other demographics here. When they send this information in, it automatically reconciles. So there's not an additional step for the front desk if they update any of the information that you see here on the right, which is why it won't let them change their first, last name and email address. That would have to be done by the practice. So this is the first thing the patient is going to be prompted to do. Next, they're going to have the ability to sign digital consent form. There's only one form currently today configured that they can sign as part of self-check-in, and that is that authorization and consent to treat. So if they have not previously signed it, it will automatically surface this and allow the patient to sign it as part of self-check-in. If they've already signed it, it won't prompt them again, but they can fill it out here. Patients can also download a copy of the form by clicking a button in the top right-hand corner, and parents or caretakers can sign this on behalf of the patient as well through the portal. This is the only form that's available, and that's mostly because it's the only thing that we can do is just have them put their signature. They can't check boxes. They can't type in free text on forms. So other forms don't really work with how this is set up, but they can at least get that authorization and consent to treat prior to the appointment. Next, they will be prompted to collect copay and outstanding balances. I want to be very clear here. This is currently turned off for most of our groups, and that is something that we made a decision on a long time ago because of the amount of patient refunds that were coming in. So for example, if a patient logged in and completed self-check-in a week ahead of their appointment and paid their copay, but then no-showed for their appointment, we were having to refund the patient for that copay amount. And that was, just causing a lot of burden on our teams. But we now have the ability to adjust the time frame of when they can complete their copay and their self-check-in. So what we are doing currently is we've identified a group of practices that are piloting this feature for us. So as part of this feature, we are adjusting the time frame that patients are allowed to check in to 3 days prior to their appointment. Currently today it's at 7 days. And so we are hoping that by adjusting the time frame and turning on copay, it will reduce the amount of patient refunds that have to be issued. So I know I just said a lot, but basically you today, if you are not part of that pilot group, your patients cannot pay their copay during self-check-in, but we are aiming to turn that on very shortly after we get some experience with these pilot departments who are testing this functionality out. Patients can also pay outstanding balances, and from here, they will be able to view any outstanding balances that they have, make payments, which automatically will be surfaced during check-in. Will this time frame be customizable by department or medical group? That's a great question. This is table space wide. So for the pilot group, we are adjusting this to 3 days. But so once we make this change and implement copay for everyone would be adjusted to that 3-day time frame if it's working well. That time frame might change slightly based off of the findings of the pilot group. So we will make an announcement once we know more from that study. Currently it's at 7 days, other than the pilot group, which is at 3 days. I will talk about this a little bit later. It doesn't impact reminder calls. So I still will get a reminder call ahead of my visit that I have that upcoming. So we don't want to mess with that because we don't want to, drive up no-show rate. So patients will still get notified. It's just they can't actually hit the button to check in until 3 days prior. So that's when they actually pay their copay. Next, that they will be prompted to take a image of their insurance card capture. So from here, from the desktop or from the mobile app, they will be prompted to take a picture of their insurance card image. So they can upload up to 2 different policies. So they can upload 2 different cards here if they have a primary and secondary insurance, and both of those will be sent to the front desk. If they have insurance already on file, they can just confirm that it's still accurate, or they can say that this is no longer valid and update the insurance that they have on file, or update the image that they have on file. So this allows them to take a picture of the front and the back of the card, or they can toggle this on and just take one image if they just have an image of one, because they can either take an image live using their phone, or they can upload it if, for example, they have it on their computer, or they have it on a website that they're pulling it from. So it doesn't have to be actually like a picture. They could upload it too if they have a file saved. I believe there's some questions. Does this affect collecting the balance as well for groups? No, they can still collect outstanding balances. This is just the copay part. And then the financial policy is separate than the authorization and consent to treat. But I don't believe the financial policy actually requires a signature. I'll have to double check, but it is just the authorization and consent to treat form that is as part of self-check-in. Great questions. Thank you. Yes, thanks, Max. So they don't need a signature. A lot of groups will just, leave a copy for them to review, but you don't have to have them sign it. So it is not part of self-check-in. All right. Next item from the patient's workflow still is medication reconciliation. Currently, this is the only health history section of the enhanced self-check-in that is turned on. We will talk about this a little bit later, what's coming up. But MedRec is the only thing patients can do today. And so today, patients, when they're going through self-check-in, will be able to review a current list of active medications as they appear in the chart. So what you see here would be what the provider sees on their side, and the patient is able to see that as well. So it's going to show a note to the patient that please add all prescriptions, supplements, and over-the-counter medications that you may be on. So they can add a medication that's not listed here, or they can edit or edit or remove any medications that are part of the chart as well. So if they are no longer taking Zyrtec in this example, they can remove that, or they can change the dose that they're taking. This does not auto-reconcile. The staff will have to review this before it's actually reconciled into the patient's chart. So we'll see that when we go through the staff workflow, but the patient can take kind of that initial responsibility of going through what's in here and cleaning it up. Any questions from the patient's point of view? So currently today, those are all of the features that the patient is able to complete ahead of their visit. We're going to talk about kind of what's coming up. But let's switch to now my patient has completed self-check-in. What does that look like for my staff? So first off, it's just confirming if self-check-in was completed or not. when you start check-in in office, at the top of the screen, there will be a self check-in banner that will show you what was and wasn't completed as part of self check-in. If some of you have seen this before, you may have seen that a patient could maybe go through the patient information and sign a form, but then they got out of the self check-in workflow before they collected copay. So patient can exit that self check-in workflow at any time and only complete a portion of what's needed. So this will make that very clear for you what they were able to complete. Hopefully they got everything done. If they didn't, you could see what still needs to be done at the practice. This will also allow you to see an audit history of what was updated as far as that patient information. And it's going to allow you to see if they signed that consent form, view the insurance card that was submitted, which we're going to go into a little bit deeper in slide coming up, and then also print out a receipt. But the main function of this is I'm starting self check-in. What did the patient actually get through at home? I think one of the most exciting features of this new update is the ability to view the imported insurance card image and then actually pull that into the patient's policy here. There are 3 different places that I can view the insurance card that was submitted. The first one is the eligibility and phone list. And this is really nice if you are running eligibility in advance. You can see patients that have submitted their card, and you can go ahead and add the policy and run insurance eligibility ahead of the visit. So if you are using the eligibility and phone list, you will see in this column for insurance a yellow banner that will tell you if the insurance card image was sent by the patient during self check-in. So you'll be able to take a look at that, and it will have a hyperlink that will direct you right to Quick View. So you can't really take any action on the eligibility and phone list from here, but you can jump to the Quick View where you can pull in that image. The second place I can view the image is the Quick View itself. At the top of the screen, I will have a blue hyperlink that says View Details, and that will jump me down to the card image itself, where I'm able to take a look at what the patient submitted. And then lastly, probably the most important place is you can see this during check-in. So I can see at the top, my patient updated their insurance card and submitted images, and that will jump me down to the section where I can actually pull these images into the patient's policy here. So 3 different places where you can see, did the patient submit the insurance card image? Ultimately, all of them are bringing you back to the section to actually pull those images into the patient's chart. So now my patient has submitted their insurance card image. How do I actually import the insurance card image and add a new policy? The first thing you'll want to do when you get to the insurance card image is you can hover over View Details. And as you can see here in this picture, I am able to see a copy of what the patient sent in. And then there's a little Add New button right below that where it says primary, or if they submitted secondary insurance, you could click Add New under there. So you'll view the image, or you can just jump straight to Add New, either way. But by clicking Add New, it is going to pop open this window of your insurance card images that you see here in the center. So step 2 is actually looking at those insurance card images. And then the blue box in the right-hand corner, it will say Use Images. Again, if they submit just one insurance card, you can just select the images that appear and say Use Card Image. If they send in multiple different cards, they have primary and secondary, you can select the ones that you're adding for this policy only, and then go back to do the other one afterwards. So you can select one or multiple here. Once you've added new, selected your insurance card image, Athena is automatically going to look up and auto match a policy based off of the insurance card image that was submitted. So what that means is when my patient submits their Aetna insurance card, I click use image, it will read that card and suggest the policy that matches what it sees. So as you can see here in this last image, once I see that image in the center, it is suggesting the most relevant policy. If for whatever reason that does not match, you know that this is incorrect, you can still go to the manual policy lookup on the second tab. That is not going away, but I've heard good feedback from this. I think it's working well. So definitely try to use what is being suggested, but know that you can go back to manually looking it up if you don't think that one of these applies. Once you see the policy that does match it, all you have to do is click the blue button and it will pull that policy in. So saves a lot of time. Oh yes, is there a mechanism to provide feedback to Athena during pilot if these are errors? So this is actually generally released. So this is no longer in a pilot for the card image piece of this. So if we are seeing recurring issues, we would want to submit a case to Athena on these because we're GA and no longer in beta for this. Awesome. So for the card image, again, add new, use your image, and then pull in that policy that auto matched. You can do this for primary and for secondary insurances as well. So I think this is one of the most exciting pieces and why we really want to drive patients to do this. This is saving a ton of time for our front desk staff. I will throw in a little teaser that we are hoping to get enrolled in an alpha coming up that does this same thing for insurance cards that are scanned in at the front desk. So we hope that that is coming in the next few months. Some of our smaller markets are piloting that out, but we're hoping to make that available to everybody soon once we get some more experience with it. And that will make it so that patients that don't do self-check-in, you can still use this auto policy match. Currently, this is only through the self-check-in if patients submit this ahead of the visit. All right. Will the updated insurance information auto update all upcoming appointments? Yes, so that will be associated with the upcoming appointment as well. Great question. So those are the basics on the admin side. So what your front desk would expect to see in terms of the self-check-in workflow. But your clinical staff and or providers will also see on their side medication reconciliation if the patient performs this ahead of the visit. So if the patient goes in and adds different medications, then this will be what it looks like. So on the left, you can see if a patient added a completely net new medication, then there will be no match on the left, and on the right side under incoming, it will show you what the patient put into self-check-in. If there is a conflict, that means that we had this in the chart and they updated the dose or the frequency or something about the medication. So that is the difference that you will see between incoming only and the ones that have a conflict. It's important to note that prescribed medications can't be modified for the patient during check-in. So I can say that I'm, change my dose on something that I'm taking over the encounter or something that was just added manually. But if the provider prescribed it, they're not able to actually change that in the self-check-in workflow. So medications added to the chart by practice users are what patients are actually able to update here. I believe there is a question. All right, there's a question in the chat. I have a care center that would like more in-depth patient questionnaire at check-in so that working the patients up once they come in won't take too long. Is this coming? I hope to answer your question on the roadmap slide. If I don't, let me know and we can we can see if what your question is, but hopefully I will answer that shortly. Wonderful. So that is medication reconciliation. When your provider and or clinical staff see this, all they need to do is hit, the radio button next to the one that they're keeping and update their chart. And there should be a button that says, select all, so that they're not going and clicking every single radio button. But if the patient made 10 changes to their meds list, they can hit select all and update chart within 2 clicks right there. Or let's say what the patient entered is not true, they can keep what they had historically. Are there another question in the chat. Are there conflicts with patients updating meds and meds being pulled in for sure scripts? So the meds that the patient is seeing during self-check-in is whatever is in the chart. So if it's already pulled in sure scripts, if they have the required elements in their chart for sure scripts to fire, then they'll see that and they can update what was in there. But if they don't have, their insurance yet, or they don't have a usual provider and sure scripts doesn't fire, then they wouldn't see that yet. So it's really pulling in directly what's already in their chart, and then they can make updates from there. I know that's a little bit confusing, but there is logic behind when sure scripts downloads and when it doesn't. So when the patient checks in, sure scripts is downloaded, they can reconcile. If it's not, then they wouldn't see that yet. Erin, does that answer your question? Awesome. Okay. All right, so let's move forward with patient communication and practice settings. So how are patients actually being prompted to start self-check-in? They can be prompted within two different ways. The first reminder is going to come via email. It is the Privia standard that we send a reminder email 4 days prior to the patient's appointment. Practices have the option to customize that time frame. So your practice may have adjusted this to, earlier than 4 days or closer to the appointment time, and you would the patient would just get the email at that point. But the custom or the standard for Privia is 4 days. And so if you have not made any changes, that's when they will get the prompt to begin pre-registration. So in the screenshot of the email that you see here, the patient has the option to begin pre-registration. That is your self-check-in prompt for your patient. When they click that blue link, they are then put into the self-check-in workflow. So which messages actually include that self-check-in link? Because I could schedule this patient for 2 weeks out. They're going to get a confirmation that their appointment was scheduled, but it's not going to give them the option to check in yet. So there are some messages they'll get that don't include this and some that do. So like I mentioned, that a reminder call appointment confirmation is scheduled, and then the reminder call email is sent, and that is what includes the the option to begin registration. So this can get confusing, but if I schedule this 2 weeks out, they'll get the confirmation, but they can't check in yet. If I schedule this 4 days out, they get the confirmation and the reminder call, they will be able to check in. So if they get a confirmation ahead of that window that they can check in, then they just won't have this begin pre-registration option. And then if they have not completed check-in at that 24 hours before the appointment, they're going to get a self-check-in reminder text message. So I got the email 4 days in advance, but I didn't start self-check-in. It's the day before the appointment. I'm going to get a text reminding me to perform self-check-in, as long as that was scheduled 48 hours in advance. So I know this is very confusing with all the different time frames, but I will send this out, and this is kind of your guide to go off of for right now. Regular reminder call text messages do not have the link, and the last minute text message, which is 15 minutes prior to the appointment, does not have the link either. I also want to say that technically, if your patient logs into the portal, they can begin self-check-in as well. And so if they log in 7 days prior to their appointment, but they haven't gotten that email yet, they're still going to be able to start self-check-in from the portal, depending on whenever the time frame is set for, which is currently 7 days. We have a question about screening questionnaires in the chat, which I will get to in just a moment. So great question. The question was, will screening questionnaires be part of self-check-in? And we will go through that in just a moment. Next question, even though some patients do the self-check-in, they do ask why we're having to check in at the front desk. If there are still things that they didn't complete, or if they have to sign additional forms, you would still need to complete that. But if they completed everything, their forms are signed, copay is done, then they wouldn't need to do any additional check-in. Your staff would just hit done with check-in. But it does depend on if they're still missing some information. What will the new Privia standard be if it's changed from 7 days to 3 days? That's a great question. I will get back to you once we hear more from our pilot. And it may be we adjust to the 3-day or the 4-day. I don't know yet. We need to find out a little bit more about how the pilot groups are doing with the new time frame. But great question. I promise when that decision does get made, we will be sharing that, across the board with how it will work. All right. Sarah, great question. Can the link be pushed out to the patient? Unfortunately not, which is part of my frequently asked questions as well. So we'll go through that too. But view patient communication history. A lot of times I get questions. My patient said they didn't get the email. Can I check if they did? You can see all of the communication that's going out to your patient by going to their quick view, going to communicator in that tan bar, and then clicking patient communication history. This is an example where I was able to actually jump in and see where the patient got the email to begin pre-registration. I could see here, did they get the text message? What number did it get sent to? Maybe it was the wrong number that they're not using anymore. But this just gives you visibility into what is the patient seeing on their side. All right, we are going to go through now the Athena 1 roadmap and some frequently asked questions. And I think I'm going to answer all of the questions in the chat through these, but please feel free to throw in anything else that I don't cover. I got this Athena 1 roadmap directly from Athena. Everybody could go find this on the resource hub if you would like. So this is their general time frame for when some of these features are going to be available. So now in the first column is what is currently available as part of self-check-in. And so this is what we have. Please keep in mind, this is what's available for Athena, but the way that Privia's table space works, some of these things may be turned on or off for us, which I will go through in just a moment. But this is kind of what's included in the most recent release. In the middle column is what they are immediately working on. They are targeting this for this year, and so hopefully we'll see all of this within this year, but it's not always a guarantee. Sometimes they take longer to build out or to test, and so these are things that we are looking forward to, but we don't have an exact time frame on when they will be available. The biggest things here are the additional history questions that you'll see. So family history, surgical history, GYN, immunizations, all of those health history sections are not available currently, but they are working immediately on adding those. So that is what is coming up in the near future. So all of those history sections are not there today, but we are hoping to have them very soon. The other big one I know is a dissatisfier right now, but hopefully coming very soon, is the in-office workflow. Right now, enhanced self-check-in can only be completed by the patient through the link that is generated as part of the reminder call email, through the patient portal, or that text message. You cannot push out a link for them to complete it. If they show up to the office and they haven't done it yet, you can direct them to go to that email, go to their portal and complete self-check-in, but you can't generate a link from the practice and you can't just hand them the iPad like you might have been doing previously. So it has to be out of office, that workflow from their own device. Hopefully I know that's something that everyone would like to see. So hopefully they will have that soon. And then in the far future, they're hoping on giving patients the ability to also add their driver's license, custom forms, and just continuing to build out this functionality. All right, some frequently asked questions. So some general questions are health history section supported by enhanced self-check-in. I just answered this, but the answer is no. The only section currently available is medications. And I know that a lot of these were available historically with Athena's legacy self-check-in, but they have totally revamped their self-check-in workflow. And they've prioritized the insurance card capture image and auto policy and medications, but the rest of the health history questions are coming. So those are no longer in there. Screeners, this is a big one. And I know that a lot of people would like to see this, but unfortunately right now we are not able to use the screening questionnaires as part of enhanced self-check-in. Right now, we can only configure them by appointment type. And as everyone probably knows, that doesn't make sense for our table space and how big we are. If I have a follow-up appointment for family med, there's probably a lot of different screeners than a follow-up appointment for pediatrics. And so we don't have the ability to configure it for it to make sense for Privia right now. We are really actively pushing to try to give us more control over how we can configure this and hopefully use it in the near future. But I want to be very clear, it is not turned on right now for self-check-in, so they will not see screening questionnaires. They can either complete these in office while they're in the waiting room or with the staff. You can send them to the portal, but they would have to print them and bring them in. Or if you are using another third party for screeners, you'll want to continue to do that until this becomes available. And then lastly, is Spanish translation available? Yes, it is currently available for all sections, all non-clinical content sections. Patient demographics, I think I answered this first one already, but a family member can update demographics on behalf of the patient if they have access to do self-check-in. And then what does the audit history look like? So I mentioned when we went through the patient's workflow and what they can update as far as demographic and contact information, I mentioned that it doesn't ask the staff to reconcile it, just automatically puts it in there. So if you wanted to see from an audit history perspective what they changed, you can go to the audit history and the patient's full registration and see what was changed here. And so you do have visibility into that, but it doesn't force you to reconcile all of those fields. Patient access and messaging. Someone asked this in the chat. Can I resend the patient the link to self-check-in? And currently there is no option to push the enhanced self-check-in workflow to the patient, but they are planning to add that. So fingers crossed that's coming up shortly. You will want to direct them to the portal or to their reminder email or text message to complete self-check-in. We can't generate a link to send to them. And then lastly, we've said it a few times, but by default today, patients can enter the workflow up to 7 days prior to their appointment. We are looking at adjusting this to 3, and we will get feedback from our pilot group. If there is anyone on the call interested in being part of the pilot group, you can reach out to me. We are welcoming anyone that wants to participate in that, as long as you are not using a third-party check-in vendor at this time. But we are welcoming more people, and I will put the email in the chat that you can reach out to if you're interested. Sarah, another great question. For payments, can they skip making a payment? How does that work? Yes, they can skip it. technically I could start self-check-in and I can exit at any time. And so patients could see that and decide to skip it. But at least it's an option that they can do it. But even if I'm going through MedRec or entering demographics, at any point I can technically get out of self-check-in without completing it. Does a Spanish translation have to be turned on by staff or patients? No, Spanish translation is automatically available for everybody. Partial payments, I believe they can make a partial payment on their outstanding balance. I will have to double check that, but just like they can make partial payments today on balances, they should be able to do that as part of self-check-in too. I will double check the answer to that. All right. Last, just leaving you with some resources and next steps here. And so if you wanted to take a look at what a video of this, I know we didn't actually walk through it today. I wanted to go more in depth on kind of the functionality and some of the nuances. But if you want to see end to end what this could look like from a patient's perspective, there are some demo videos as well as from the staff and providers perspective. Please keep in mind, these are Athena generated resources. So there may be some differences on, if, for example, screeners that we have slightly differently. You'll just kind of get a sense for the feel of it. But everything I said today is how Privia has set this up. There's a resource overview, and then I just pulled out some of the frequently asked questions, but there is a long list of frequently asked questions that can be found using this link as well. Debbie asked, will they have the option to set a card on file? And they cannot do a card on file from self-check-in at this time. And then Privia training resources. Today's training will be available shortly through Privia University. If you attended today and have registered through Privia University, you should automatically get the link once it's available. But if there's anyone else searching for it, it will be searchable in Privia University. You can share it with your colleagues. And then lastly, we have a Privia Connect knowledge article that is out there that if you wanted to print out a resource, share it with your practice, take a look at some of the screenshots, you can find this on Privia Connect. And this is a comprehensive guide of what it looks like from the patient in the care center and some of the questions we went through today. So this is on Privia Connect, and the link is embedded in today's training. Erin, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I was just wondering, for the offices that are currently using the start self-check-in and providing the patient a tablet, how will enhanced self-check-in affect that once it does go live for 804.2?
So enhanced self-check-in is currently live for 804.2, and that should no longer be an option because it's going away with this.
Gotcha. Okay, so no more self-check-in. It's just with the link that gets sent to them beforehand.
That's right. So that's what I was referring to with that in-office workflow. That's that link you're talking about where they can generate it and hand them the tab. Mm-hmm. That in-office workflow is no longer available. So enhanced self-check-in is live today across all of our markets. And as long as you're not using a third-party check-in vendor, this is on today. And that means no longer can you do the in-office workflow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, great question. I know it's confusing between the two enhanced the two self-check-ins. Legacy self-check-in is what we had previous to the spring release, so before March. Enhanced is everything after March, and we are really hoping that feature becomes available soon, but right now it is not. Erica.
So I know you mentioned in the slides that only the patients are prompted to fill out medication as part of, let's say, like the clinical component of the check-in. Do you know if patients are still able to log into the portal to complete health history questions outside of check-in? Or is that just completely disabled?
Are you thinking that they could go and update their allergies in the portal?
Yeah, so basically a lot of those like other questions that come through, like the historical, like Medicare annual questionnaire, or some of those other health histories.
Yeah, so the you might be thinking of like the health event engine that sends a question on like flu shot, colonoscopy. Is that what you're thinking of?
No, it's like PAMIV, so like problems, allergies, historical meds and stuff like that. I just received a case this week where like I saw people filling out questionnaire stuff, and I thought it was turned off, so I was surprised they were still filling it out. So I was thinking it was just because they were going into the portal after the fact, but this might just be
send me that case. I'll take a look at it.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yes. Did you say you're going to put the information to be part of the pilot group in the chat? I will put this email in here right now. If you have a care center that is interested in participating in the pilot, you are welcome to reach out to this email, and I will pass it along to our RCM folks. Just as a reminder, you cannot be using a third-party vendor to be part of this pilot. Any other questions?
Olivia, will you be sharing out the response to Erica's question?
Yes, I can figure that out.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all of the great questions. This was a lot of great engagement. So thank you. Please reach out to that same email if you have any questions that come up after today. But the recording will be available shortly. So thank you so much.